What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another price guide. And this time we are going to focus mainly on mint on card vintage Kenner items. I did pull a couple of mint and sealed box items that I wanted to cover, a couple of vehicles, as well as a laser rifle that sold for some interesting money. As always, thanks to my Patreon supporters, and I've got two shout outs to give, Michael A. and Todd B. They are good buddies of mine, and they recently increased their Patreon amount for the month, each month. So I want to say thanks to Todd and to Michael. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate the channel support, and all of my Patreon supporters really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. So I wanted to dig into some awesome items. The first one is an AFA 60 20-back G Luke Farm Boy. So fairly low grade, but it still did sell for $2,000 plus $15 shipping. And the item looked good except for the blister. The blister was kind of crunched there, and that's what the main culprit was for why it got the 60 grade. It had a Kmart price sticker, and it was punched. And here is the label on it. It was 80, 60, 80. So two high subgrades, but that 60, because it was so low and because it was so obvious with the bubble crunch there, as you can see in that photo, you know, that brought the entire score down. So again, it's not the average of all the different sub scores when one sub score is bad enough. So because that blister was so badly dinged, the overall score was a 60. But it did not stop the bidding. The card obviously was in great shape. The 20-back G, I've got the 20G for the Death Star droid. But this was a awfully nice looking Farm Boy, and it did sell for $2,000 plus $15 shipping. Here is that 3-position laser rifle, mint and sealed box, graded AFA 75. Pretty nice looking example there. And this one is always tough to find. And this one is on the Star Wars logo. I can't remember if there's a Return of the Jedi version of this or not. It might have only been on the Star Wars box art for that one. But it shows Luke there getting ready to shoot at some stormtroopers. But this one's a rare one. This one's really tough to find, mint and sealed box. And there is the label on it, 75 grade, excellent plus to near mint. That one only had one bid though, $9.95, one bid plus another $91 shipping. So let's call it about $1,100 took that one home, but certainly a pretty desirable item, not one you see every day. Likewise, I thought this was a great buy. I was really surprised it sold for so cheap, but this was a mint and sealed box, Slave One, on the Empire Strikes Back packaging. And it was an AFA 75, so mint and sealed box. Now, for reference point, this just shows you how far the market has fallen. There was an AFA 75, I believe, I'm going on memory here, that sold last year in an auction on eBay that sold for between $3,000 and $3,500, somewhere in that ballpark. So you can basically cut that price in half now, and only one bid. So it just shows you that the market has definitely dropped for some of these pricier items, not just the more common mint on card items. Even the expensive items like this Slave One mint and seal box has come back down to earth a little bit. So $17.50 took that one home on one bid. Here was a mint and seal box TIE Interceptor. This is another one that's kind of tough to find. AFA graded examples I've seen sell for anywhere from about $900 all the way up to $1,400 in the last 6 months. And this one was ungraded, but it was mint and seal box. It looked like it might have had a little bit of color fading on the box there. It could just be the photos, but to me it looks like the colors have faded just a little bit from either sun damage or something else. But nevertheless, it did sell in a buy it now situation for $670 plus $40 shipping. So you're looking at $710 altogether for that one. But it was mint and sealed box, probably in about 75 grade. It had some kind of edge wear and things like that, but pretty nice looking example. Back to the mint on cards. This is the only Empire Strikes Back card I believe I have in here. The rest of these are all Return of the Jedi, Tri-Logos, Power of the Force, things like that. But this was a unpunched Imperial Commander on the 47-back free 4-LOM offer. It did have some litho damage in the upper right-hand corner from where the sticker was removed, but it was unpunched, and it was a clear blister. And there was, it looks like a small ding in the upper right-hand corner, but still, this is a fairly common item to find. For whatever reason, the Imperial Commander on the 47-back, I see a lot of these. And this one also did have a shaved pop, so I'll point that out as well. That one still sold for 175 pounds, which is $223. My personal opinion is this was an overpay because there was an AFA 75-ish example that was a 48 back, admittedly, offerless, that sold for under $300. This one is a little bit earlier card back, but that one was offerless, which most people tend to prefer offerless cards. Not always the case, but certainly on some of them. And at least on the Empire Strikes Back. I mean, like the 48 back transition card free Neonum offer, that one's always an expensive card just because only there were Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars figures on it. But in this case, because of the shaved pop, to me, I think that's probably a little more than I've been willing to pay. It did sell again for 175 pounds. I was thinking it would kind of sell for 150 US dollars, 150 US dollars, but it sold for 223 US dollars. This one I thought was a good buy. I think I had this one in What to Buy video. This one was an unpunched Luke Jedi Knight, and it looks like a clear blister, or if it is a yellowed blister, it's only faintly yellowed. But that blister is in really great shape relative to most of the examples you see there. This one was a 65 back B, and this was the made in Hong Kong. So it did have a price sticker, but still, that's in really great shape overall. At least when you compare this final sales price of $400 free shipping relative to some of the ones that sold on Hakes here just very recently, I thought that was a really good buy. Next up was a Death Star droid. This one also was on the 65 back B. It did have some hanger damage on the top of the back of the card. You can see a little tear there. But overall, the rest of the card was in decent shape. One little color-breaking crease in the lower left-hand corner. But again, that was a clear blister. And the 65 back B, for whatever reason, for the Death Star droid, you can usually find that one in a clear blister. It's not always the case, but I do have a clear blister that I bought. Now, for reference point, I got one last year, I believe, for $335 US. This one sold for 385 pounds, which is 491 US dollars. And I would argue that this one's probably in a little bit worse condition, just given the creasing there. So this one is one that's held its value pretty well. And again, clear blister Return of the Jedi cards are not easy to find, and those continue to command a pretty good premium on the secondary market. Next up was a yellowed blister Darth Vader. This one was the 77 back A, offerless, and again, it was a yellowed blister. It did have some creasing and things like that, so by no means perfect, but that still sold for 360 pounds, which is $459. A subscriber named Bill recently picked up one of these for about half that price on eBay. So you just never know what you're going to find. It might, this was an auction though, so at least in the UK, people were willing to pay up for it. But I think if you're patient, you probably could have picked this one up maybe a little cheaper. But maybe that's just me. But that's still, again, sold for $360, which is 460 US dollars. A couple of tri-logos, one of them standard, the other one's really funny that I'll show you in a second. But this prune face looked to be in pretty good shape. I mean, the blister was not perfect. It did have a ding on the top of the blister there, but card had some light edge wear to it. This is probably like a 75 grade, but that sold for $118.50 plus $10 shipping, so about 128 bucks. I thought that was a pretty good price there, just given. Again, it wasn't perfect, but it probably would score about a 75, it would be my guess. It's hard to say with that blister. I mean, it's like gambling when you send in kind of a middling range tri-logo to either CAS or AFA. Sometimes they come back and they recognize that those blisters are very fragile and they often have dings and they kind of won't kill you too bad on the scoring. But this one, I don't know if you necessarily would need to grade this one. This is a perfectly good example of one that you could put it in like a star case, or not a star case, but a Ian's Display GW acrylic case, one of those sliding acrylic cases, and it would look amazing on your shelf. So $118.50 is not a bad price, though. Now, here's a hilarious one. I had to show you this one. Somebody listed this one mint on card, even though the blister was completely shattered, and it was an R2-D2 sensor scope. And I don't know what was going on with the card there. I don't know if it just got eaten up by bugs or what, but I just thought it was hilarious and I had to show it. I would love for that blister to be fully sealed instead of cracked like that, because it would be really fun to send it into AFA or to CAS to see how it would score. But they would probably score it like preserve grading. I don't know, but again, the blister was not sealed, so really what you're buying here is a near mint plus condition R2-D2. Although, even the sticker had a little bit of yellowing to it, but the dome was in great shape, as you can see there. That dome is gorgeous, and it looks like the gold dome for the R2-D2. I don't know if that's the case or not, but certainly a nice-looking example of the R2. But I don't know why they even bothered keeping the packaging on that, but I had to at least show it just because it was funny. But that did sell for $124 plus $6.55 shipping. Next up, we've got SW Seller. He always has really nice loose graded as well as mint on card at auction. And this one was a beautiful example of Leia in her combat poncho, 77 back A. It was a yellowed 80, straight 80s for the sub score, unpunched. So a really nice example. Admittedly, the blister was very heavily yellowed, but that's pretty common for these U.S. release Return of the Jedi card backs, especially the 77 backs and later. That one sold for $255 plus $15.60 shipping. And he also had this gorgeous example of the Made in Mexico Lili Ledy squid head. And somebody asked recently on in the comments, they said, what's the difference between one for the U.S. Market versus the Mexican market? And I've got two examples to show you. First of all, I've got 5 examples. One of them for the U.S. market, which is this one. And what's notable about this is that they were produced in the Lili Ledy factory in Mexico, but they were imported here into the U.S. for the U.S. market. What makes them unique is that, number one, the backs of the cards are very matte finish. They're not nearly as glossy as the U.S. cards. And in the lower left-hand corner on the back of the card, you'll see Made in Mexico, as you see right there underneath the action figures sold separately. Now, you'll also notice where it says Return of the Jedi on about halfway down the card on the back. It's got a little punch that goes all the way through it. That was actually done by the factory to, I guess, make the blisters breathe. And typically these do stay clear blister. It's because they're a different type of blister than the ones used for the U.S. market. They're lacking some kind of fire retardant that was added to the U.S. market mint on cards that caused these things to yellow. And the Lili Ledy factory did not have that fire retardant. It was probably like a regulatory thing or something that was required by U.S. manufacturers or the U.S. government for U.S.-based manufacturers, that Lili Ledy didn't have to have that. So anyway, for whatever it's worth, they usually do stay clear blister. Not always, but usually. And this was a pretty nice example of squid head, and it was graded AFA 80, 80, 85, 80 were the sub-scores on that one, and the label appropriately says Made in Mexico. Now, there is also a 77 back A squid head that was not made in Mexico. That one usually does yellow, but this one did not. But that, inside there, it's usually almost always Lili Ledy figures with Lili Ledy accessories, but they were known to mix and match, where they imported kind of Kenner accessories, maybe the capes, things like that. But this one to me looks like the Lili Ledy with the ribbed cape squid head. It's kind of a known variant for loose graded collectors is the ribbed cape, and that one does look ribbed. So anyway, that one did sell for $260 plus $15.60 shipping. And then, to compare that to what were actually manufactured by Lili Ledy for the Mexican market are these. And it says La Guerra de las Galaxias, El Regreso del Jedi. So there was also El Retorno del Jedi. Those came a little bit earlier. The Regreso card backs came a little bit later. But this is a true mint on card Lili Ledy made for the Mexican market. And these are notoriously very, very pricey because they're not very numerous in terms of what's left and not already opened. This one was a yellow blister Pat Blue. That one sold for $510 plus $80 shipping. So $590 took that home. And this seller also had a number of other examples, including Lumat. This one also had a yellowed blister. That one sold for $510 plus $80 shipping. So the exact same price as the Pat Blue. Neither one of them were perfect, obviously. But again, it's so hard to find these mint on card El Regreso del Jedi card backs that people are willing to pay up for them. As expensive as those two were, these two were the most expensive. This Star Destroyer Commander, this one did have a clear blister, and the card was in overall really great shape. This is probably like a 75 grade, but that's a beautiful example of the Lili Ledy Star Destroyer Commander. And here's the back of the card. The backs of the cards are also unique relative to the U.S. release Made in Mexico card backs. This is the positive card back. There is also a matte black card back. Let's see if all of these, I think, had the positive card back. So you can see some damage there on the back of that card back for Lumat. And then this one, the Pat Blue, also had the positive card back. But there is a negative card back that's all black, where the figures are outlined in white. But all three of those, at least so far, were the positive card backs. So the Star Destroyer Commander, that's a stunner. That's a really beautiful item and very, very difficult to find. And I think it's actually sold for a pretty good price, $13.26 plus $80 shipping, so about $1,400. Took that home. You do see these sell quite often on Facebook and some of the Facebook groups for quite a bit more than that. And then finally, here was the gem. This one is an AFA graded example of the El Regreso del Jedi Yoda. And so there is a Returno version of Yoda as well as the Regreso version. And so this one obviously is the Regreso version because that's what it says on the card back. But if you see the card backs with El Returno, those are a lot more expensive because they were produced a little bit earlier than these examples. But this was a stunner, AFA 40, not very high grade, but most of these survivors, again, are not very high grade. It's tough to find them in high grade. The card got a 40, blister 75, figure 85 for an overall 40, and that was a clear blister as well. And that one sold for big money, as you'd expect, $3,200 US dollars plus $30 shipping. And, you know, just as an example, a loose graded example of this El Regreso del Jedi Yoda, you know, a high grade, loose graded example is like $400 to $500 minimum, I would say. So to get it mint on card, you're paying $3,200. So big money on those, but very cool to see those sell in an auction. Just not very often that you find that. Next up, going back to SW Seller, he did have this Power of the Force Lumat. That one sold, that was an AFA 80, 85, 80. That one sold for $310 plus $15.65 shipping. So it's interesting because this one is the standard Power of the Force. Admittedly, it's higher grade, AFA 80, that sold for, let's call it $325 after shipping, versus this one, that was a much more difficult, much more rare example. That one sold for about $590 after shipping. So to me, this one's a better buy at that price point. But again, admittedly, it's not nearly as good a shape. But that's a rarity. It's very, very tough to find that. Next up, let's see. We also had finally an R2-D2 pop-up saber, last 17 R2. This was unpunched, no price sticker, probably about an 80 grade. You know, it's tough to say. But, you know, a little bit of edge wear on the right-hand side, but the blister looked great. Admittedly, very heavily yellowed, but the card was in pretty immaculate condition overall. And that one did sell for $810. I mean, you think about what a loose-graded R2-D2 pop-up saber goes for. You're getting it basically for the same price. So that's a pretty good deal, I think, for an R2-D2 mint-on card Power of the Force. So anyway, I hope you found this information helpful. Thanks, as always, for watching, and I'll be back soon.